Hi, Max from Enactivate, and today I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the pitfalls of meditation and breathwork. As wonderful as they are, I certainly recommend them. I've been enjoying them for 30 plus years, but there are some pitfalls, some little traps that you can get into with inner work, with breathwork and meditation. And if you know about them in advance, you can avoid them and you're not going to waste time on them. Now, I personally fell into all of these pitfalls, wasted a lot of time and energy trying to figure this out, but I want to share with you how you can understand them so that you don't have to fall into them and you can smoothly navigate them. Now, the left brain, right brain split or dichotomy isn't, it isn't 100%. But there are certain characteristics that belong to the right brain, the right hemisphere primarily, and the left hemisphere primarily. And there is a split between the two physically. They are connected at a couple of points during the brain, but for the most part, there's this chasm between the left and right sides of the brain so that they can specialize, so that they can have specific jobs. What does the right hemisphere specialize in? So it's good at a global understanding, at the big picture, zooming out. What's happening? It likes to explore, to adventure, to find the unknown. The right hemisphere deals with empathy, deals with trying to understand, okay, this person might be experiencing something difficult right now. Let me give them space. Let me give them grace. Let me be kind. That's the right hemisphere working. The left hemisphere is only thinking about what my needs are. The right hemisphere is well connected to the subconscious. And the right hemisphere is very much more of even though it's mental and we're using our brain, it's much more of a flowing state of thought and expansive thought. The left hemisphere, not bad. The left hemisphere is contrasting to that. It has different functions, different specialties. It understands things by taking them apart and figuring out what the parts do. It doesn't like the unknown. It wants to know all the variables. It likes the familiar. It likes patterns. It's unable to empathize, meaning it's unable to put oneself in someone else's shoes and think about, well, this might be happening for them because I said this, therefore maybe I can tone it down a little bit or maybe change the way that I'm approaching this to create more space or more safety or whatever. It doesn't have those functions because it just doesn't have them. It doesn't have those parts that work to understand empathy and to see what someone else might be feeling. It has much more conscious brain activity and less unconscious or subconscious brain activity. And the left brain experiences time in much more of a sequence rather than a flow. What does that mean? If you've ever been really focused on a certain activity, time just goes by and you don't even notice it, right? Time flows by, you don't even know time is flowing by. But when you're in more of a left brain activity or a left brain thought process, there's much more awareness of time and the flow of time. And that is not bad. We need to understand the flow of time when you're in a big train station and you're changing from one train to another train. You very much need to understand the flow of time, right? If you don't, you're still drinking coffee and your train is already on its way, right? So this is not good or bad. These are just different functions, different capabilities. So the right hemisphere, this is how this relates to the topic of self-observation. The right hemisphere is able to and actively seeks self-observation, meaning it wants to look at the big picture. What am I doing? How am I doing it? Is it working? And it wants to grow and evolve. It's not afraid to step into new territory and let go of old habits. It wants to explore and to evolve. This is the right hemisphere's nature. A quote from Socrates: "The unexamined life is not worth living." This is a very powerful quote. The unexamined life is not worth living. So many people know Socrates, know thyself. To me, this is giving a little bit more detail of what he's saying there. The unexamined life is not worth living, meaning just living by unconscious emotional reactivity. That's what I believe this is talking about. This is not using self-observation, meaning unexamined is not worth living because you're just stuck in a reaction all the time. The left hemisphere avoids any kind of scrutiny of one's own behaviors, any kind of self-observation. Maybe I didn't need to do it that way. It will justify why you were mean to that person, it's okay. It will justify why it's okay to hold that resentment, because they did this, they did that. This is just the nature of the left hemisphere's processing. Impulsiveness. This is left hemisphere. It's just going to react. And perhaps the most, or one of the most alarming traits of the left hemisphere is it will create stories about situations, fantasies about situations, and it will go off into those fantasies with a very much a self-centered theme. So you're the center of that story, but it's often just a story. So 50% of testimony given in court is just wrong. So this means someone has seen an event, they're not necessarily lying, they've seen an event, they've interpreted it in a certain way, and they've created a story about it. And when they come and they say, this is what happened, but there happens to be camera footage of what happened, 50% of the time, they're just wrong. They're point blank wrong, because people, and especially the left hemisphere dominated thought creates, it embellishes what's happening. It's embellishing memories. It literally takes memories and adds pieces and takes away pieces that are inconvenient to weave it into a story that fits its paradigm, its view of the world. And without self-observation, you're in that fantasy. I'm in that fantasy. Pain is not the thing that happened. This is the paraphrase. I'm paraphrasing his words, but pain is our own reaction to that thing that happened. So there's no inherent pain in something that happened. All of the pain is generated from within oneself by one's own interpretations and one's own reactions of what's happened and how that's going to affect us. So pain is not in the thing, it's in our own reaction. Now that doesn't mean that all pain is bad or wrong. It just means that it's very much dependent on our way of seeing a thing and understanding a thing. So in order to self-observe, we need right hemisphere activity, and we need activation of the right hemisphere. Very, very important. When we hear a statement like, the mind is bad, don't think, feel, if there's a teaching like that and we misunderstand it, what that really means, in my opinion, is beware of left hemisphere dominated storytelling and misunderstanding and generating narratives that are false to suit your own needs. That's really what's meant by this teaching, in my opinion. It's all about not getting stuck in the self-centered, limited left brain, which has its uses. The left brain has its uses, very good at doing certain tasks, and we need that. But if we get locked into it without right brain activation, it's a problem. The right brain is the part of the brain that's able to self-observe and to empathize. We need that. So in that sense, the mind is bad, or don't think, feel, well, we want to think in this case. If we can bring in clarity and objectivity and self-observation, we want to do that now. Again, to qualify this, we don't want to do that in the middle of a meditation or a breath work, in which case we're focusing on energy, we're focusing on the field, we're expanding our awareness. But in our 3D world, we want to develop, to cultivate this ability to self-observe, because it's going to allow us to increase our performance in our 3D reality, in our relationships, in our work, in various elements. Success in our 3D reality is going to be very much linked to the ability of right brain activation, of self-observation that is sincere and genuine, because then we can see how we're actually doing and address issues that we're able to find, because we all have issues. We all have things that we can improve on. Every human being has them. That's natural. It's normal. It's not criticism. But only the right brain wants to seek those out and fix it, make it better, improve, evolve. So how do we go back to the right brain? How do we switch on? How do we activate the right brain? Breath work. Meditation too, but breath work. In my opinion, for most people, it just, in terms of getting more out of a short chunk of time, breathwork is going to be very, very powerful. Now, as you progress in your experience, as you have more ability to focus for longer, meditation is going to become very useful, and it's going to become, it's a wonderful tool. I also meditate a lot, but I like to start with breath work. I like to get in a very focused state, in a physiological state that I want to be in, that's calm, that's safe, that's expansive. I'm not overly thinking, and then I can go into a deeper meditation much easier than starting off straight with that and kind of spending time battling my thoughts to get to a calm state or to get to a quiet state. That's how I do it. But breath work and meditation, great way to activate the right hemisphere. Self-observation. So I'm going to talk more about the specifics of that after this. Art, music, nature, being in nature, connecting with living beings. Doesn't matter if that's a dog, a cat, whatever it is. Living beings, when they interact, this stimulates the right brain. There's a synergy, there's an energy that happens. I'm back right now in Wakayama, which is more central Japan, where we live a little bit further north in Yokohama usually. I'm back here at my wife's parents' home. We have 3 cats and a dog who I haven't seen for a while. And one of the cats in particular, who I'm very friendly with, she is coming and hanging out with me a lot. That interaction with a living being, you have to be present with that. You have to be open. You have to be aware. You can't be in a limited, just like your own little world of fantasy or of this or of that. You become present with the other living being in order to share a moment. I haven't seen the cat for Emily for several months. She's happy, she's purring, I'm happy to see her, and there's a living interaction that unfolds there that is very much right brain in nature. How do we go about the business of self-observation? What are the nuts and bolts? So I recommend to start with 5 minutes. Why? Because any new practice is going to be a little bit, it's going to require some energy to get it going. Anything you want to bring into your life, doesn't matter if it's exercise, doesn't matter if it's learning a language, doesn't matter, anything new you're going to bring in, it's not easy. But once you establish the habit, it becomes easier. But if you start small, you lower the hurdle, you increase your chances of success. 5 minutes. I usually do it in the morning, the previous day. A time when you are relaxed. Don't do this at a time of the day when for you you're stressed. You're going to write down what happened the previous day in any event where you felt yourself getting a little bit emotional, a little bit hot under the collar, a little bit, any kind of emotional reaction that you felt as unpleasant. Who were you with? What was happening? What time of day was it? What happened? You're going to be as objective as you can. You're not making anyone wrong, or you or anyone else. You're just trying to, what happened in that moment yesterday? Or if it's today, that moment today, when I got out of my rhythm, when I got emotional, when I got reactive, what was happening? Then we're going to write down very briefly, very simply, if the same thing happened again, how am I going to deal with it? What am I going to do differently? If the same thing happens, how am I going to respond to that situation? And if you're calm in that moment, you can usually think of a better way to respond, meaning a more evolved way that produces a better outcome for both people or for everybody involved. Not meaning you think of a smarter comeback so you can make the other person look. No, it's not about getting one up. It's about creating a better outcome for everybody. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this content, I'm sure you'll enjoy the next video, which is about to appear on this screen. See you there.